Barnaby Buckle was a boy who had an extraordinary talent for falling out of things. You know how sometimes you go to get something from the top shelf and you lose your balance and then you just feel like you in slow motion as you fall? Well, that happened to Barnaby all the time. And it wasn't just books, it could be anything: bikes, chairs, even trees. He would always land with a thump. At first, this wasn't a big deal because he was a small child and soft. But now that he was a gangly 12-year-old, he made more of a sound when he hit the ground. He also left a trail of destruction in his wake: broken vases, dented fenders, and snapped table legs. It got so bad that Mama Buckle put him on a special diet. She told him to stay away from tall furniture and sturdy structures. "It's not safe," she said. "You could hurt yourself," but Barnaby Buckle couldn't resist a good climb. His room was filled with forbidden territory: high shelves, window sills, closet poles. So he did what any sensible lad would do. He kept a tally of all the things he wanted to climb in his journal. There were 17 items on the list, and at least 3 of them were off limits, namely his bed, which was both tall and sturdy. Then one day, there was a knock at the door. It was Mr. and Mrs. Fluffbottom, the Buckles' next-door neighbors. They invited Barnaby to come see their new piece of furniture, a magnificent grandfather clock they'd purchased from an antique shop. "We just had to show it to you, Barnaby, because you have such an eye for tall, sturdy structures," said Mr. Fluffbottom with a wink. Barnaby smiled. He knew exactly what he had to do. As soon as the adults went into the kitchen to discuss floor wax, Barnaby made a beeline for the clock. He circled it slowly, admiring the intricate carvings and the polished wood. He tried not to stare too obviously at the top, but he couldn't help himself. This was a very tall, very sturdy structure, and Barnaby had an irresistible urge to climb it. He started up the right side, his fingers digging into the grooves of the clock. When he reached the top, he looked around proudly. From here, the world looked different. The wallpaper patterns on the walls seemed exotic and strange. And he could see inside the cupboards above the fridge where his mother kept the forbidden cookies. Just then, he heard footsteps. In a panic, Barnaby crawled behind the clock. A moment later, Mrs. Fluffbottom came into the room. She saw the ladder lying beside the clock and frowned. "I must have left that here when I was dusting," she said. Then she walked over to the window. "Barnaby," she called, "where are you?" Barnaby held his breath. Would she look behind the clock? Maybe she'd think he climbed it to get the cookies. He hoped not. It wasn't his fault. The cookies were right there, and the climb was just tempting. When Mrs. Fluffbottom went out the door, Barnaby let out a sigh of relief. He slid down the back of the clock and trotted to the cupboard. As he pulled open the door, he noticed a glint of metal inside. He reached in and pulled out a key. Barnaby turned the key in the lock of the clock. It opened easily, and he stepped inside. It was dark and dusty, but he could make out a spiral staircase at the top. He started up the stairs and found himself on a platform. He peered through the clock face. Outside, the hands were spinning wildly. Barnaby took a closer look at the platform. There was a gear in the middle with numbers 1 through 12 carved on its rim. He pushed the gear, but nothing happened. He tried again, harder this time. The gear spun once, twice, then it stopped. As the clock chimed, a secret passageway opened up behind the gear. Barnaby stepped through. It led to a narrow tunnel, and at the end of it, there was a light. Barnaby hurried toward it. When he reached the other side, he found himself in a cozy living room. It had a plush carpet, velvet curtains, a crystal chandelier, and a large marble fireplace. On the mantelpiece above it sat a framed photograph of a young girl wearing a Victorian nightgown. Barnaby was about to explore further when he heard a voice behind him. "So you found the passageway? I was hoping you would." Startled, Barnaby whirled around. Standing in the doorway was a girl who looked exactly like the one in the photograph. Her hair was like spun gold. Her dress was trimmed with lace. She looked as though she'd stepped out of the picture. "Who are you?" asked Barnaby. "My name is Celeste," the girl replied. "And I'm going to take you to meet my father." Barnaby followed Celeste through the house. It was enormous, filled with winding staircases, hidden doorways, and antique furniture. He wondered where they were. How could a house like this be hidden in the suburbs? They finally reached a library with towering bookshelves and a large desk in the middle. Behind the desk sat a man with twinkling eyes and a long white beard. "Ah, my dear Barnaby," he said with a smile. "I've been expecting you." "Expecting me?" echoed Barnaby. The old man gestured to a chair. "Sit down." "I have much to tell you." Barnaby sat down heavily. Suddenly, the room started to spin. The books on the shelves blurred into streaks of color. The desk and the old man faded away. Then everything went black. When Barnaby opened his eyes, he was in his own room. At first, he thought it was a dream, but then he noticed a key in his pocket. It was the same key he'd found in the clock. He ran to the clock and put the key in the lock. It opened easily, and there was the secret staircase. Barnaby hesitated. Should he go back? What would his parents say? Would his friends believe him? No, they'd never understand. It was too scary, too confusing. He didn't want to go back. And besides, he still had 5 more items on his climbing list. He went back to his room and grabbed the book. With a determined look on his face, he crossed off the words grandfather clock and wrote in secret passageway. He looked around his room. The closet pole was calling to him. It was tall and sturdy, and not too far from his bed. He couldn't resist. Barnaby Buckle had discovered that the best adventures were often hiding in plain sight. All you needed was a little curiosity, a lot of courage, and maybe a sturdy helmet for when you landed on your head. He was lucky he hadn't cracked himself open like an egg. In fact, he owed his life to the sturdy structure. If he hadn't fallen out of things so many times, he might not have developed such a keen sense of timing. When he fell out of the treehouse, he managed to roll away just in the nick of time, saving himself from certain injury. And when he fell out of the airplane, he remembered to tense all his muscles so he wouldn't break any bones. But Barnaby's greatest escape came when he fell out of the castle tower. He tucked and rolled in midair, somehow landing on his feet. The king and queen were so grateful that he saved himself. They invited him to stay in the kingdom as long as he wanted, although they did ask him to steer clear of tall, pointy structures. Barnaby thanked them kindly, but he missed his home. So with a heavy heart, he said his goodbyes and returned to his room. He looked around. Nothing had changed, but he had. His room seemed smaller, his bed not so tall, the shelves within reach. He sighed. It was boring being safe. That's when he heard a knock at the door. It was Mr. and Mrs. Fluffbottom. "Barnaby," said Mr. Fluffbottom, "we need your help." "What's wrong?" asked Barnaby. "Our new clock," said Mrs. Fluffbottom. "It stopped working." Barnaby smiled. Finally, an adventure. He grabbed his helmet and ran to the front door. If you enjoyed this crazy escapade, buckle up for more wild rides. Click the link below to watch another one of our fun-filled adventures. And don't forget to subscribe for even more excitement.